Hey, good to see everyone here at the Voice of College Football on a Wednesday night. A little bit different look, a little bit different vibe, but that's okay. Here we are with ACC and Big Ten Media Days this week. My name's Mark. Good to see you. Maybe we'll pick up some additional people for whatever unknown reason. But yes, technical issues at the Voice of College Football, more specifically technical issues with StreamYard that is responsible for being the platform to distribute our live streams, and a live chat with StreamYard, a series of direct messages, a series of emails. None of those things have worked. None of those things have gotten them to wake up. So hopefully we will be able to fix this issue by Thursday, or we will have more issues. But we're not going to think in that direction. Hopefully StreamYard can get off their asses and help us here at the Voice of College Football, because we are certainly supporting them with our monthly fee. But we want to talk about media days, and I will scramble together to get some of my notes. Appreciate everyone being here. I don't know that I can see your messages. I think if somebody makes a message, I'm going to be able to see it. So if you just want to say hi, just to make sure that we can see messages, please do so. Just say hi, just to be polite. Why don't we do that? So again, we're going to go through media days. Let me grab my notes. And I think I should stay plugged in. All right, there we go. There we go. And I am not surprised that it's Jackson right out of the gate. So what's up, Voice of College Football Nation out of Jackson? Good to see you there, Jackson. And then we also have Ed. Thanks for being here, Ed. Yes, Jackson, thank you so much for taking care of our sponsor. And to Chris Gates Fitness, our sponsor, we will have to make this one good, because we certainly can't do our sponsor justice tonight, unfortunately, because of technical issues. So we will make our sponsor happy by extending our sponsorship, because we cannot fulfill our sponsor needs on this Wednesday night. But we will fulfill the college football content needs of all of you. So good to see you, Tom. Thanks for jumping on. Sonny, good to see you as well. I believe Sonny made it back from Big Ten Media Days after Illinois and Brett Bielema, I think at least for a second consecutive year, got the honor of kicking off Big Ten Media Days. I don't know what that tells us about Wisconsin or about Illinois football. Still, Brett Bielema, Wisconsin. I guess it's still somewhere back in the outer reaches of the brain. But yeah, I had some thoughts about hearing Brett Bielema at the podium. But we're going to stick to everyone that we saw today, and then maybe we'll kick back and we will talk about some other teams as well. But let's focus on the teams that hit the podium today. David, good to see you. Yes, absolutely. We can always talk about sponsors. There is nothing more important than sponsors, except our beautiful viewers. The viewers would be number one, and the sponsors would be two. I may be number three. I've probably been pushed from number three as well, but I am certainly do not come close to being as important as A, the viewers, and B, the sponsors. So again, we apologize to our sponsor, Chris Gates, with his training program. We cannot highlight them tonight. In no way will I be able to do it justice, so he will get a bonus run a little bit later. Unfortunately, we can also not have our guests on tonight. We had a good show lined up with Marty Leap from Penn State Rivals, and Corey Braddock was going to stop by to talk Iowa football. And we had Matt Zemek, who was going to jump in to talk USC from Trojans Wire, and a few others as well. But unfortunately, a no-go tonight. All right. So we heard from James Franklin, and he talked about the travel. He talked about not having necessarily an international airport in Happy Valley, which was a huge shock to me. They're basically surrounded by nothing out there in Happy Valley. I guess that's what makes it happy, especially these days. And then he started in on his analysis of they have done tons of analysis at Penn State to deal with the travel and the travel issues. And he's got to keep in mind that his football program has the least of it of any of these sports programs there at Penn State. Of course, the football team only has to deal with it 4 or 5 times, and most likely, think of it this way. And a lot of these comments are scrolling by, and unfortunately, tonight, since I'm on the phone, I can't go. Yes, I can. I can go back and see what you guys have left there. So I'll get back to your comments in just a second. We'll make the most of this. This will actually be fun in some ways. Again, if you're just joining us, we apologize for the phone broadcast tonight instead of our standard deal, but our streaming platform, StreamYard, has let us down in a big way today. We've been locked out of our account for hours and 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 hours, and we're still not in. And I've sent them multiple DMs and chat support and emails and nothing out of them. So I'm going to be asking for 3 free months. I think that's, I have emphasized how much revenue this has cost the voice of college football. So we appreciate you all being here. All right, back to James Franklin. So think about this. James Franklin spent the first couple minutes of today's time at the podium complaining about travel. Well, he's got a football team that either plays 4 or 5 conference games on the road, and I guarantee that all but one of those are the same exact destinations that they would have played the previous 10 years plus. 10 years under him, which would have been the same as what they were facing under Bill O'Brien or Joe Paterno. So how does that make any sense, James Franklin? This is the first time today you didn't make sense, complaining about the travel. And he wasn't complaining about it, but just talking about how much analysis that they've taken, tons of, I even quoted it here, tons of analysis reviewing travel at Penn State. Okay, well, okay. You're playing 5 or 4 road games, and all but one are the same opponents you would have faced anyway. Okay, they've got one trip out to USC. They've got one trip to USC, and then they host Oregon, right? They host Oregon. All right, so it's a trip to USC, James. And there are other sports programs at Penn State and other places that are going to have to deal with that on a weekly basis or a bi-weekly basis. Oh boy, we've got a message held for review. Boy, I can't wait to see this. Oh, okay. We've got Lee calling, I thought he was calling me a moron for a minute. Lee is calling James Franklin a moron. I'm not going to go quite that far, but I just thought it was, and again, he did so in a very matter-of-fact way, and I guess he was just highlighting the changes in the conference, and he, of course, as did every coach, welcomed the 4 new Big Ten members, but then he went into travel challenges. They're traveling to the same places except for one game. Okay. And then next up for James Franklin, let's see. And again, we were going to be joined by Marty Leap of Rivals tonight, so we hope to have Marty on soon. They've got 3 new coordinators, and as soon as I knew that already, but I guess as soon as that sunk in a little bit, and I thought West Virginia played them last year. West Virginia's got some intel on Penn State from last year. I can't state this as a fact. I know a lot of people would state this as a fact, but I am not one of them that would say it's tough to beat the same team 2 years in a row. I would need verification on that to believe it myself. But they go to West Virginia. That's a difficult place to play. And it's week 1 with 3 new coordinators. So my initial response to that was not that I'm going to pick this upset, but Penn State at West Virginia, week 1. Keep it in mind. Keep that one in mind, folks. Then also what I found interesting, no, we will save the best for last concerning James Franklin. Let's see what else is in the notes here. Of course, a new defensive coordinator in Tom Allen, being the right fit, didn't have to get another job. Can you imagine his buyout? Tom Allen's got to be picking up a good $13 to $15 million. So he doesn't need Penn State. James Franklin mentioned that the Kansas offense was explosive the last couple of years, especially last year. And now with the coordinator coming in from Kansas, that's where they really could use a boost. Big plays, explosive plays in the Penn State offense. Did not have that last year. And the blame can be thrown around all over the place. That was Drew Aller, but that was the offensive line. And that was, I think, more than anything, I think that was wide receiver play. That James Franklin was pretty upfront about that, the wide receiver play not being what it should be, and that those guys know it. So at least he acknowledged that the wide receivers were not good at Penn State last year. They were okay. They weren't an embarrassment. They weren't Iowa. But the wide receivers, not Penn State standard last year. And, of course, they got Julian Fleming coming in from Ohio State. We hear great things about him. And 2022 was a good season for Julian Fleming at Ohio State. 34 catches, 6 touchdowns. So he's motivated. Penn State was the runner-up for Julian Fleming coming out of high school, was the #1 wide receiver, 5-star, and chose Ohio State. Before I get to the one comment that I thought was a bit amusing, it was also amusing to me, and I saw that Corey Bratta stated this on social media, that before James Franklin took questions, it was either at the end of his speech before taking questions or at the end, he pointed out Kirk Ferentz and his great accomplishments. It was just kind of strange. Didn't know that Kirk Ferentz had announced that he's going to retire or something like that. And so the only reasons that I could come up with why James Franklin would specifically single out Kirk Ferentz, no other coach, just Kirk Ferentz. And he didn't win like his first Big Ten championship last year. He didn't win a national championship. He did not, again, announce his retirement. Is that my #1 thought was he was just letting us know, okay, this is a new era in this league. We've got 4 new programs, and we're moving forward with 4 new programs. And Kirk Ferentz is the dean of coaches in college football, not just the Big Ten. I am correct in saying that, right? That Kirk Ferentz is the dean of college football coaches now that Nick Saban is retired. And that might be it. That might be it. It might be because Saban has stepped down. That makes Kirk Ferentz the dean of college football coaches. Mac Brown would be, and somebody can fact check me on this. Please do, because I might be wrong. But I believe it would be Mac Brown. Because his first season at North Carolina was 1997. But, of course, he stepped away after Texas for 5 or 6 years. So it's Kirk Ferentz. And B. Bean believes it's time for Ferentz to retire. Mac Brown is correct. Thank you, Lee. Yeah, so it would be Mac Brown as the dean of coaches, but there was no Mac Brown from what, 2013 to 2019, 2018. So it's Kirk. So maybe it was because Saban, so I get it. I'm going to let Corey know that because I saw Corey's post on X, and then I didn't watch James Franklin live, but I watched him later, and then I got to see why Corey had posted that. And so I think it's because Saban stepped down. My other theories were either just because he followed him at the podium and wanted to say something nice about the previous coach, and it happened to be Kirk Ferentz that he followed at the podium. Then I thought maybe he's just trying to... There's been a bit of an icy relationship there between Kirk Ferentz and James Franklin. So I thought maybe he's just trying to mend the relationship a little bit by honoring Kirk Ferentz. Dabo, Clemson, 15 years. Yes, sure. Thank you for the update, B. Bean. But that does not come close to, but thanks for updating us there. Yeah, Dave Doran. I've had a lot to say through the years on Dave Doran. Okay, final note on James Franklin, which is my favorite. So whoever pointed this out, whichever reporter it was that last year pointed this out, and I'll say, by the way, that over the last couple days, and even going back to last week with SEC Media Days, I'm not watching these live. I'm just on my laptop, and I'm just catching clips, and I'm just gathering it all in, trying to watch as much as possible. That makes it more efficient, for one thing. Number two, I have yet to select a TV provider. So I noticed that, as is the case on YouTube, you watch a video, and then they kick you to wherever they think you would want to watch next. And so they typically were kicking me back to last year's Media Days. And so with James Franklin, I'm doing a bunch of work. I'm listening to James Franklin. I'm taking notes. I think I was actually even preparing lunch. So I'm cooking lunch, listening to James Franklin, taking notes. And then they kicked me into last year's, and it reminded me that I had asked James Franklin a question at Big Ten Media Days when he was at the podium, and I never saw that on TV. It was live, so I wouldn't have ever seen it. So I kind of scrolled through and I watched my question of James Franklin, and I'm sure you're all just pleased with that. All right, Will's here, Steven's here. Good to see you guys. Tom is here as well. Michael, good to see you as well. All right, Michael, Purdue. Lee, I don't know. Will, Notre Dame. Stephen, Ohio State. Tom, I don't want to screw it up, so I'm not going to say. HR picking stuff. We've not seen HR for quite some time. With a comment about Deshawn Foster. We will get to Deshawn Foster in just a second. So my final observation on James Franklin, and I am so glad that somebody asked this. They said, in 2018, you made the comment after another gut-wrenching loss to Ohio State, in which Penn State led by 2 scores in the fourth quarter, then Dwayne Haskins, boom, in the final 5 minutes, 2 touchdown passes to pull out another game. Ill-fated call with Trace McSorley on 4th and 5. And Penn State fans, I don't need to remind you. So Penn State loses another nail-biter, another excruciating loss to Ohio State, 2018. And James Franklin says after the game, the first issue I had with this comment was he called his program great. Okay. So I guess great being under elite. Rock, good to see you. B-Bean, good to see you. I was happy about that game. So he called his program great, fine. I don't agree with you. That's not the terminology I use. When I say great, I mean like you are Hall of Fame caliber as an individual, and you are probably going to win a national championship. If you're a great team in college football, if you're a great program, you are competing for national championships every year. Anyway, James Franklin calls his program great. He separates that from Ohio State and says, and he points to the other locker room and says, in that locker room, they are elite. We're trying to get to elite. Does anybody remember that comment from James Franklin in 2018 after the Ohio State game? He said, there's good, there's great, there's elite. We're great, but we need to get to where they are, elite. So I thought it was gutsy of this reporter. I certainly would have asked the same question if it would have hit me, because I've gone back to this comment from time to time concerning James Franklin. We are now going on 6 years. 6 years, folks, since James Franklin made that comment. It's been 5 football seasons. We're going into year 6, and nothing's changed. Nothing has changed. Not with Penn State. Now they're chasing Michigan instead of Ohio State. I guess you could say that. That's what's changed. Ohio State, the dominant program. Now Michigan owns the Big Ten. That's what's changed. But in terms of Penn State, nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. HR picking stuff. James Franklin equals Brian Kelly. I have no problem with that comment. I have no problem with that comment. So that's what I've got on James Franklin. Now let's go to Nebraska and Matt Rhule. And I didn't hear from any players. Maybe I'll catch up with that at a later date. I was basically out of commission from about 3:30 until this live stream because I had some errands to run and some obligations more so. And so I was gone this afternoon, needed somebody else to take the Florida State show. So check out the Florida State show. I got my Florida State colors, but I did not host the Florida State show tonight. George, our buddy from the Renegade Report, did. So check out the Florida State show. And once again, our apologies go out to our sponsor for tonight, Chris Gates Fitness. We will make it up to you, sir. But check out in the description section of last night's video, and also Jackson left it in tonight's chat. I'm telling you, $10 the first month for a fitness membership. You got to check it out. Check it out. I'm going to be on the plan. We can trade notes. You get coaching. You get instructions and directions on the exercises themselves. You get a different set of exercises and a different workout every day. $10 for the first month. Okay, let's go to Nebraska. So we've got some continuity at Nebraska, so that's good. So we still have Tony White running the defense, of course, and he did an exceptional job, and they almost lost him. There were rumors that he was going to UCLA. Now, in terms of the offense, they brought in some help by way of Glenn Thomas to help out Marcus Satterfield. So Nebraska, they're funny. Nebraska is, to me, one of the most interesting teams in the country this year. Nebraska is. Miami is. We'll talk a little Miami. Miami, Nebraska, they really intrigue me. Who else? Notre Dame in a different way. I think Notre Dame could win the national championship. They could. All right, back to the Huskers. We know what the deal is. This is the least successful program in college football over the last 6 or 7 years. Isn't that incredible to say that? The least successful program. That doesn't mean they've got the worst record, but compared to their expectations, their standards, and considering that they are the only team in power football that has not gone to a bowl game since 2016. 2016, I didn't have these wrinkles then. That's how long that's been. Wow, that's crazy. So Matt Rhule made the comment that the players are doing everything right. They're going to class, they're being leaders in the community, they are going to meetings, they're being on time, they're working hard, they're doing all these great things. Now they got to take it to Saturday, of course. Got to go to Saturday with that. The quarterback play was among the worst in college football last year, and we know what's going on there. It was Jeff Sims. I am not going to claim here a year later that I predicted that Jeff Sims would implode and be horrible. I certainly did not predict him to be a top-flight Big Ten quarterback because I knew that he wasn't. But no touchdowns and 6 picks and benched. Yeah, it was awful. It was worse than Iowa quarterback play. And so a year later, here we are with Dylan Raiola. And you'll want to check out our conversation coming out in the morning with Phil Steele. So we recorded with Phil Steele a couple days ago. That's going to be released tomorrow because I asked Phil Steele about trying to evaluate a first-time starting quarterback who's never played one snap of college football like a Dylan Raiola. So the question is not arm talent. The question is, can he play in the Big Ten as a true freshman? That is going to be fascinating. Nebraska, to their defense, had ridiculous amounts of offensive injuries last year. Offensive line, backs, receivers, all went down all over the place. Now, they were kind of fortunate that Jeff Sims got hurt. That probably helped the offense, but otherwise, it was a mash unit and not a Hut Nashmaker unit, but it was a mash unit for the Huskers last year. But otherwise, isn't it just crazy? This would almost make me believe in superstitions, in jinxes, that it was like Scott Frost never left the sideline last year. The way Nebraska lost football games last year was just a continuation of Scott Frost in the Scott Frost era, where this team was the worst team in America in one-score games. The worst. And I'm going to shut up about Nebraska because I'm letting a ton of comments fly by. Keep in mind the Super Chat's available to all of you to support the voice of college football. They were minus 17 in turnover margin, Nebraska. So think about how close they came to winning 6, 7, 8 games last year. If they can get to even, and Matt Rhule says that they want to get to +7 this year. They were minus 17 last year. I think that's a pretty aggressive goal. But let's say they get to even. Nebraska intrigues me. I don't quite know if the defense is quite as good as many Nebraska fans believe they are, or the statistics would show that they are. They will play USC and Oregon. That may hurt the defensive rankings this year. Matt Rhule said, expect great defense and a jump on offense. He said that his team has more confidence. He said, guys, that, and I thought he was just talking about college-age kids in general, not just football players, but just college-aged kids in general are lacking in confidence these days because everything gets scrutinized. They're on social media. They're comparing themselves to others, all of that. But he said, And his team showed that last season and when he first arrived at the program. But now they are walking around with more confidence. All of this always sounds good. And I will say this for a second consecutive year, that Matt Rhule impressed me more than any other Big Ten coach. And I know that we still have yet to hear the final day of Big Ten Media Days and whoever's showing up tomorrow. Sharon Moore with Michigan, Mike Loxley, Maryland, Dan Lanning, he's fun to listen to from Oregon, and whomever else is showing up again. PJ Fleck. Thursday's a good day. You get some PJ Fleck, Dan Lanning. That's a good day at Big Ten Media Days. We have sound posted from Kirk Ferentz, Matt Rhule. I'm going to have some sound posted from Lincoln Riley. And we've got Denzel Burke and Jack Sawyer as well. Okay, that's enough on Nebraska. Well, what do you guys have for me? Moose is here. Good to see Moose. I said hi to everyone else, I believe. John D. Adamo. Our guy John is here. John Paul Bacon. Liking that stream. Thank you for that. JPB. The Biscuit. Yes, with the true freshman quarterback. Okay, Biscuit, hang on. True freshman quarterback, yes. But also understand, what did Matt Rhule do in his second season at Temple and at Baylor? Matt Rhule, second seasons. I know it's only happened twice, but still. I think we can take something from that. True freshman quarterbacks. Deshaun Watson, true freshman quarterback. Trevor Lawrence, true freshman quarterback. Who else? I think Jameis Winston was a red shirt, right? Cam Newton was a red shirt freshman. Well, Cam Newton went right into the NFL, so he had to have been a sophomore. Any other true freshman quarterbacks that were astounding out there? Who else? Now, yeah, true freshman. There's a difference between being a true freshman and being a first-time starter, because of course, everybody's a first-time starter at some point. Now, Justin Fields, C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, they were all young players that had never played, never started, but they got their feet wet. They were in the system for a while. Well, Justin Fields was not in the Ohio State system, of course, but he got some meaningful reps at Georgia. Michigan State. I really like what Jonathan Smith said about his mentors at Oregon State. And it was a really good question. And the question was basically, you have either played under or coached under Mike Riley, Dennis Erickson, Chris Peterson. What did those guys teach you? What did you take from them to make you a top-flight football coach? And Jonathan Smith went right down the line. Mike Riley, this is what he taught me. And I can't really recite much of that because I didn't write it down. Chris Peterson was more of the CEO, how to hire, how to build a program, how to change a culture. He was more of that. Dennis Erickson was the competitor. Mike Riley was more dealing with people. And Mike Riley coached both sides of the ball. And Jonathan Smith said he learned a lot from that. Jonathan Smith also said probably the most important thing stated at Media Days today was that he has not worn much green. Really couldn't wear green before. Now he gets to wear green at Michigan State. And let's not forget what Jonathan Smith pulled off at Oregon State. Pretty remarkable. If you go back to the time in which Oregon State first hire Jonathan Smith, you look at, I remember reading an article in SB Nation, and it outlined Oregon State's advanced metrics and how atrocious they were. They were the worst advanced metrics, regardless of what their record was, which was practically the worst in college football. If you go to the advanced metrics to measure how poorly they played, they were the worst football team over a 3-year stretch in about 25 years. And Jonathan Smith left there 10-3, 8-4 his last 2 years. And 8-4 against a really good conference last year, and a good conference the year before when he went 10-3. So Jonathan Smith can coach. Michigan State, they're in an interesting place. They're kind of in no man's land in that conference. They are not a have. They are not a have-not. Nobody here, I think, would predict in any way that Michigan State, I'm not talking about this year, but even down the road, in the next 5 years, is going to do much of anything in the Big Ten. But I don't think any of us would be surprised. We would not be shocked. It can be done there. Mark D'Antonio did it. George Perlis did it at times. Nick Saban, right at the end of his tenure at Michigan State, had that one big year in 1999. All right, Iowa. Let's not forget USC, but we will go with Iowa since we mentioned Iowa. And again, if you weren't with us, I thought it was mighty interesting that, and this was pointed out to me again by Corey Bratta, but then I went and watched it where James Franklin took particular note to acknowledge the accomplishments of Kirk Ferentz. And as we noted, we think we figured out why. All right, on to Iowa. Embrace change, look for opportunities. That's a standard coaching cliche right there, talking about the new Big Ten and everything else going on with the transfer portal and NIL. Iowa's got a huge senior class, which that used to be an important statistic. Now it's not so much important, but at Iowa, it is important. So this is a cycle up year for Iowa, unless they really change their success in the transfer portal and really jack up their dividends in the transfer portal. Yeah, they need to take advantage this year. They've got a soft schedule. Take Wisconsin's schedule, as we did the other night on the Iowa show, every Tuesday at 5:30 Eastern, 4:30 Central. Corey Bratta, myself, the Iowa channel, Tuesday nights. Check us out. We took the Wisconsin channel, or the Wisconsin schedule versus the Iowa schedule. Huge gap, huge difference between those two. Huge difference. Take Iowa's schedule, aside from Ohio State, if you take the Big Ten and split it into top tier 6, middle tier 6, bottom tier 6, and of course there's going to be a bunch of overlap because we are not perfect in our projections. Iowa only plays Ohio State in the top 6. They play a bunch of teams in the middle 6, but the toughest teams that they play in the middle 6, they play them at home. Nebraska, Wisconsin, not Minnesota, Nebraska, Wisconsin. And so it's an easy schedule for Iowa. It's not an easy schedule. Relatively speaking, it is. All right, what else from Kirk? He was asked about, of course, Tim Lester, new offensive coordinator. All right, question for the chat. How many points is Iowa going to average this season per game? What is Iowa's scoring points per game total going to be per game? I want a per game estimation. Per game prediction for Iowa. Will says 10-2 for Iowa, good enough for the playoffs. Yes, should be. David Knight says they're going to score 7 points a game. Dave's going with 21, Chad 24, the Biscuit 20.8. I love the specificity there. Will goes with 17, Tom with 18, Michael with 20, Jack Straw, thanks for being here. Keep chopping, thanks for being here. Jack with 24, keep chopping. Go Scarlet Knights 17.3, Gary Heineman 117 points per game. As Kenny Mayne once said, I think that would be a record. Jason, 19.6. John Paul Bacon coming in with 14. And Moose is asking the question. Moose never listens to me. How many points is Iowa going to score per game this season? Jim's going with 15. And Aaron says if their players are still betting, they'll keep hitting the under. That could be it. That could be the issue right there. I think Aaron has uncovered a scandal. Do you guys know what the Iowa points per game in the year of 2023? We're not talking about, even if we were talking about 1975, this would be a horrendous number. Iowa averaged 15.4 points per game last year. And that's even more pathetic when you think about these teams go out and play Utah State and an FCS team. So they've got a couple games to pad that total, and still it's 15 per game. Moose, I'm just kidding. Ryan, see, that's a smart fan right there. Ryan being extremely smart, asking overall or the offense, because we know that Iowa's defense scores and special teams scores more than anybody in the country. They score more than anyone. Look it up. And a lot of that year to year is chance. It's happenstance. It's, okay, you kind of lucked into a couple pick sixes, and then maybe you had a couple special teams plays, because we know that these teams are not scoring defensive and special teams touchdowns every week. So if you can score 3 or 4 or 5 in a season, that's huge. You're going to be in the top 10 in the nation. But Iowa does it every year. It's crazy. It's ridiculous. Moose is saying, why does everyone think that Jack Tuttle will be QB1? I don't know who everyone is. Man, it sounds like we need to get some top flight analysis back on that Michigan channel, Moose. Are you missing me over there? Is that the problem? The Biscuit is about to set us up with the biggest upset of the year. Michael says, how crazy is it that Purdue went 4-8 and averaged almost 24 points per game, while Iowa averaged 15.4 per game, and they went, of course, 10-2 in the regular season. And I'm trying to think of what the score was when Iowa played Purdue last year. I keep thinking of the year before when they played in West Lafayette. Iowa actually put it on them, but they played at Kinnick last year, and it had to be a close game. But I cannot recall that. Can you recall the score of that game? I could probably tell you every Iowa score from last year, but for some reason I am blanking on the Purdue game. Yeah, it's not coming to mind. It's not coming to mind. All right, what else out of Kirk today? Yeah, Tim Lester. This is an excellent hire. 20-14. Thank you. 20-14. Yeah, that somewhat rings a bell. And that sounds like an Iowa win. There you go, 20-14. Ferentz just went on and on about Tim Lester, that the player feedback is positive. He's an obvious leader. He's a head coach. A lot of head coaches have stated, not just on Big Ten Media Days this week, but throughout these media days, Big 12, the ACC, the SEC, the coaches that have former head coaches on their staff, I have heard this over and over and over and over, what an advantage that is. because they have so much to manage with NIL and transfer portal on top of everything else, that these head coaches are very much appreciative and leaning on their assistant coaches who are former head coaches. So for Kirk Ferentz, that's Tim Lester. Probably the most telling comment that Kirk made was concerning the quarterback situation. So he said that it's a fluid situation. It's wide open. They're going to camp. They don't have a starter. He just said that's how all the positions are, which you know that Jay Higgins is going to be a starting linebacker. You know that Luke Lachey is going to be a starting tight end. Like some guys, yes, it's technically wide open, but they are the best players. They will be starters. They're All-American type players. But at quarterback, Kirk said it's wide open. However, he stated, quote, Cade McNamara has a huge advantage. I don't really know that I liked hearing that. And I don't know if that meant it's still a competition. We are still evaluating. It's going to be wide open. We are going into August camp with our eyes wide open. But Cade has shown us that he's going to be the starting quarterback. Or that Kirk was basically saying, we're going in with it wide open, but I believe that that is a huge advantage, and I'm expecting to see this huge advantage manifest itself, that with all this experience and success that Cade McNamara has, that he's going to win the job. I don't know. I just hope that it's a fair competition, because I think Brendan Sullivan could win this job if given the opportunity. And ACC fans, I apologize. I'm not going to be able to give much analysis from ACC kickoff today. I only saw Mario Cristobal. But I will backtrack and especially look at Norvell and Dabo, because that's what people want to hear about. And if they had anything that I can tear to shreds, of course, that makes for good video content. Speaking of which, as much as the question that was asked of James Franklin making the comment back in 2018 about striving to be elite like Ohio State, I enjoyed the comment, or the question that was posed to Kirk Ferentz about the comment that he made about USC. I thought this was tremendous. So good for some reporters. These questions are typically bland and stale, but there were a couple zingers here. And basically to say, quote, this is what you said about USC, even though Kirk did not name USC specifically, he was obviously talking about USC. And I think it was at a point last season in which he was sick of hearing about their offense sucking all the time, that he flipped it. And why he started talking about USC, I don't know. I think it was because they've got great athletes, great offense, but they were losing. They had lost some games, and Iowa was not losing. Iowa was probably 7-1, 8-2, something like that at the time, and USC was losing more games. And Kirk made it obvious that, well, that team on the West Coast, they play horrible defense, and they basically never get it right, never fix it. What's the deal with that? That's a paraphrase. So that was brought up to him. And so, of course, this is a year later. And so Ferentz backpedals. He took accountability for it. It's not like he shied away from the comment or said that he didn't make it or that he meant something else. But he said, well, that's what I would call drive-by scouting. And that's what I was doing there, drive-by scouting. So he, in a sense, said, I shouldn't have said that because I really don't know. And he said, that's a great program. They always get great athletes. They've addressed their defense. I'm sure they're going to be better, and I'm sure they're going to be, he didn't say one of the top teams, but basically that they're going to be a factor. Cool dudes, gaming, and more. We are going to ask the chat their thoughts on the NCAA game. So you know what my thoughts are? My thoughts are that it doesn't exist. The Biscuit has not played it since 2003. So the Biscuit has actually played it more recently than I have. Yeah, I have no interest in that. Don't care. Yeah, I can't give you much. I have basically had 2 stints of video game periods in my life. The first one would have been when I was like 15 or 16 and I played video games, but I didn't play them. I was never obsessive. It didn't really matter to me, but I played a little bit here and there like everybody else. Went to the arcades, got the Intellivision. Does anybody remember Intellivision? I thought they had great sports games. So I asked for Intellivision, and I got it for Christmas or my birthday. I think it was Christmas. And then, because I've got a son who is now 27, yeah, when he was about, 6, 7, 8, 9, in that range, yeah, then I played video games. Michael says, what about ColecoVision? I don't know what that is. All right, we talked about Michigan State. We talked about, I don't have much on USC. I did listen to Lincoln Riley, and I thought he was rather good. I thought he was explained more than other times that I've heard him speak, but nothing outrageous. He was asked nothing about his offense. I don't know that he was asked a question about Miller Moss. Now, this was at the podium. I haven't watched the side sessions yet, but I don't know that he was asked about Miller Moss with the offense. I think it was all about the defense, because the defense has been so pathetic that it's all about Danton Lynn. It's Danton Lynn. I've got to correct myself as well. It's not Danton Lynn. Danton Lynn. And did a remarkable job at UCLA. And Riley said he got off the phone the first time with Danton Lynn, and said he knew he's the guy. He's the guy we need. And again, another head coach that is having an impact on the current head coach, Matt Entz, the new linebacker coach there at USC. In a roundabout way, I guess every coach was asked one somewhat controversial question. Somebody's throwing out some hearts. One somewhat controversial question was, somebody did not name Paul Feinbaum, but they obviously alluded to Paul Feinbaum and his criticism of Lincoln Riley, who basically said, I listen to the people that cover USC football on a daily basis, and I have great respect for what they do and that they cover us fairly and they understand the program. But anybody nationally, I could care less. I don't listen to them. Good for you, Lincoln Riley. All right, the last team to review in the Big Ten is UCLA. Who saw Deshawn Foster hit the podium at Big Ten Media Days? Now, the more this sunk in and the more I saw the rest of his presentation at the podium, the less I thought it was a big deal or significant. But Deshawn Foster, for being a first-time head coach, he obviously is not a speaker. He was the worst. Okay, Deshawn Foster, and I'm not just talking about his introduction and his opening remarks, because those were all-time horrific. Those were the worst I've ever seen. Yes, he looked frozen. And I'm thinking, I understand being nervous. I understand this not being a strong suit, but still, my initial thought was, what's going on? Well, my initial thought, had I seen it live, I would have been even more befuddled because I was prepared for it because I saw the comments on social media. And so then I watched him. I watched his speech. And so I was anticipating problems. And what? Like, I'm thinking, this is the level of a 12-year-old if they have to give a speech and they are unprepared and they are overcome with anxiety. It was just like, I don't want to say it didn't make sense. I don't want to say that it was on par with some other people that we've seen speak on big stages recently. I don't want to say anything like that because it did make sense. Yes, we're in LA and so is USC. Like, nothing he said didn't make sense. It's just, it sounded like a third grader was talking. And it didn't get much better after that. And he answered the questions. But every response was kind of like this. What about the offensive system? And he was asked about Chip Kelly runs this type of running game. He is known for these type of formations and this type of running game. Are you going to implement similar run plays and a similar approach into your run game? Deshawn Foster said something like, yeah, we might do that. Okay. I don't know. Maybe somebody needs to sit down Deshawn Foster and tell him, okay, you're not just hanging out with your buddies and having somebody ask, are you doing this and so? And you just, you're talking to these two dudes over here, so you don't want to talk to this guy. And so you're just going to blow him off and say, give him a 3-word. Like, people traveled from thousands of miles away, and this is on television, and you need to expound on the answer. You need to explain. It was just, I don't know whether to feel bad for the guy. I don't think so. He, I think, is well educated, and I don't think he lacks in intelligence. I just think I have a basic thought that if you are of reasonable intelligence, that you have strong areas of your intelligence, whether you are book smart or street smart or mathematically gifted but not socially aware, that there are various mental capacities that we all have, unless you really struggle in that area and you have obvious issues that are clinically proven. I'm talking about anybody who's capable of, and reaching all the way to high intelligent people, they have many of them have obvious issues. So yeah, that hopefully is one of his, that he will do much better at a later date. And then there's Miami. Okay, we covered the Big Ten. And take your comments, questions. We got the Super Chat available. You can also hit me up on Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App to support the channel. We appreciate you doing that. And I got to say, I'm going to put together some type of listing, whether it be on video or I'm going to post it with the people that have contributed on Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App, because I know that we do not recognize you because it doesn't pop up during the broadcast, but we thank you so much for those people that have contributed on Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App, and I will do something to recognize all of you. Miami, Mario Cristobal. Mario Cristobal always seems like he's pissed off. This is just the way the guy conducts himself, I think, all the time. He just seems like he's always pissed off. And he seemed like he was pissed off today. He talked about Cam Ward, that everybody in the country wanted Cam Ward. And there's obvious reasons why, because he's a game changer. He makes plays. But he did give a good answer on Cam Ward. He said, that's obvious. Everybody knows that. He was the #1 quarterback in the portal. Everybody wanted him for the obvious arm talent and what he can do. However, what we noticed was after a bad play, not just by him, after a bad play by a teammate, after adversity on the field, he always showed his competitive spirit, always showed that he bounced back and he regrouped and he got his teammates together and they recovered from that. He always was able to lead them through negative situations. That he immediately gained the trust of his teammates. He drew them in. He communicated with them in such a way that he gained their trust. He's a first-rate competitor. Again, we're talking about Cam Ward, Miami quarterback, and also that he's an alpha leader. Okay, that's Cam Ward. Mario Cristobal said that they made a ton of progress, which they did on the defensive side last year in 2023. They were much better last year in all types of metrics, but they are going to be so much better this year because they have raised the caliber of player at Miami. They just have better athletes, better players. They've recruited better, and he expects that to show up significantly. They've got continuity on their coaching staff. This Miami team has no excuse not to seriously contend for the ACC championship. The schedule sets up well for them. They've got the best quarterback in the conference. They have recruited the best. They've got a good coaching staff. They have the best roster. A lot of people think it's not even close over Florida State and Clemson. I think it's pretty close. But I do believe that they're the best team. They've got the best talent. He was asked about focusing on Florida and that it's a rivalry game, week 1, huge game. But he gave a coach speak answer, but it makes total sense. He said not to disrespect your question because I know you want to hear about Florida and they're a good team, but they can't think about Florida. They don't want their players thinking about Florida. It's July 23rd. They don't want their players thinking about Florida. It makes no sense. And Michael asking about Louisville and Jeff Brom. Can they contend for the ACC championship? Probably not, but it would not surprise me if they do. But we will dive a little bit deeper, of course, as we get closer. No Cuban coffee for Mario. He's highly disappointed about that. And how they strive for excellence in everything. And that's pretty much that's enough on Mario in Miami. And that's what I caught today. That's my complete rundown of media days. Do we have any comments or questions coming in? Jason does not see Miami contending for the ACC championship, but they are going to be annoying to play. Cam Ward is going to make a lot of big plays for them. Michael is a good guy by giving Deshawn Foster some grace. Public speaking is something many struggle with in all professions, so I can give a guy some grace. It's a word we rarely hear these days that should be uttered much more often. Mike says, I feel like UCLA will be a worse version of West Virginia in the Big Ten. Okay. All right. I can see that from a record standpoint. West Virginia has been in the Big 12 since, 2011? They won the ACC. Not the ACC. They won the Big East, beat an ACC team in the Orange Bowl their last season in the Big East. The Geno Smith 70 points on Clemson. And they came close to winning the Big 12. Will Grier 2018. Was that the year? 2018? 2016. I think it was 2016. And Will Grier had a big year, and they lost to Oklahoma 59-56. But yeah, West Virginia's basically been 7-5, 8-4. Couple down years under Neil Brown, back to 8-4 last year. Yeah, I'll give that to UCLA. I don't think they're going to be in West Virginia's league this year. Aaron, interesting comment there about Deshawn Foster and the presidency. Jason says it's really not that much of a big deal. Screwing up on Media Day's statement does not have impact on anything. I basically agree with that, but it's indicative of other things. It could be indicative of other things. No, that didn't matter. Anything else out of you guys? I am hoping that we get our streaming situation worked out, and we will be back with you on Thursday. So Thursday, what do we have? We've got the Michigan show. That's the Michigan call-in show on Thursday. And we're going to do another Media Days live. We hope to do that at 4 p.m. Eastern. And I'm going to get working on my program rankings. I've been working on them for weeks, but we need to tie it all together, and we're going to do 3 videos on program rankings. So we're going to go 135 to 100. No. We're going to go 135 to 80, then we'll do 40 to 80, and then we'll do a top 40. Is what we will do with our program rankings. I am still debating whether to do a game-by-game prediction for all the teams in college football. Maybe. I see other people doing that. Our buddy Uncle Lou does that, I believe. And I'm sure other people do as well. I have in the past. I think in some ways it's kind of pointless, but you're going to get my predictions one way or the other, and we are still trying to figure out, and will figure out, how we're going to address my game predictions this year, because they are fairly valuable. So we will figure that out, and also be looking out for a program schedule, an in-season program schedule here at the Voice of College Football. And somebody gave me a great idea for the 24-hour marathon here in the last couple days. So who is up for the 24-hour marathon, which of course is Thursday, the opening Thursday night, that runs right through, I think how did we do that last year? I think I started at 5 in the morning on Thursday, and we took it till 5 in the morning on Friday. Yeah. Michael says, oh, Mark, but the most important question is when the top 25 that actually makes sense preseason poll comes out. Okay, two things, Michael. Number one, it's not a poll. It's not a poll. It's a dictatorship of one. That's the first thing to clear up there. Number two is it's already out. It's been out for a long time. So check it out. All right, folks, appreciate you being here. And again, our apologies first to you because we couldn't conduct our show as we typically do. And our apologies also to our sponsor, Chris Gates Fitness. Thank you for Jackson grabbing that. So there you go, Michael. There you got the top 25 that actually makes sense. B-Bean, thanks for being here. Kevin, everybody else, appreciate you being here. And again, program rankings are coming out in the next few days. And we may do game-by-game predictions and an in-season programming schedule coming out in the next few days as well. Appreciate all of you. Please hit the like button on the way out. Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App to contribute here at the Voice of College Football. See you on Thursday.